Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something probably a bit different than I've discussed in the past because I've spent a lot of time in 2020, maybe even to some extent 2019, talking about stimulus to fatigue, all of this stuff about what we can do to push our training volumes up higher and higher and recover from it. But I think when we get into those discussions, we lose sight of the fact that when we are chasing things like maximum recoverable volume, what's going on there? We're chasing that last, in theory, 1% of our gains. And the other end of the equation is to think about the fact that some of the most effective and best movements we could possibly do don't always have ideal stimulus to fatigue ratios. And what do we mean by that? The amount of fatigue that they generate that you have to recover from relative to the amount of muscle stimulation that you get. But I think something that we need to think about too with a lot of these big axial loading movements is that there is so much overlap of big muscles and stabilizers and everything else involved that if we start looking at the cumulative effect and these exercises start to overlap, we do all agree though that the stimulation is very, very high. And you know, it's one of the things that I point out is that a lot of times we don't care with novice lifters. We don't care at all about stimulus to fatigue. Right? We just have a novice lifter do squat, deadlifts, bench presses, all these other basic movements without concern for this because they're just not capable of generating enough workloads for it to be an issue. And the fact that these exercises hit so many muscles and they build so much size and strength for them that we don't care about the stimulus to fatigue. And I would make the argument that even for more advanced lifters, this only really becomes important when you're saying things like, I want to push my absolute most training volume. And that's the issue we have, is that some of the experts and coaches who do push the stimulus to fatigue stuff are also trying to push people to maximum recoverable volumes. And my point is that that just simply isn't necessary to make really, really, really good gains in size and strength. Definitely not necessary for strength. And if we're trying to squeeze out the last bit of size, the only argument there is that it's when you're trying to squeeze out that last bit of muscle mass. But it's at the point of, are you doing twice as much work in the gym? Okay, are you doing twice as many total sets to achieve that? And I think that's the other end of the equation to think about, is how many extra exercises are you having to do because we're doing smaller movements that maybe have a better stimulus to fatigue. So if you're chasing this, not only are you doing more total sets oftentimes of a given exercise, you're just having to flat out do more total exercises. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have overlap. I do believe that to maximize development of any muscle, it needs more than one exercise. Okay, and I want that to be very, very clear. I am not advocating that we only need to do one exercise for our pecs or our triceps or our quads or anything else. I don't think that the data supports that. I don't think the real world evidence supports it. I don't think the scientific literature supports it. We do need multiple exercises, particularly if we want to get as big as possible. And I would argue that in many cases, two may not be enough. Right? For some of the more complex muscles, even two may not be enough. You might need three. Okay. And I mean, I train a lot of different angles and variations. But I think the thing to think about here is if we're not chasing maximum volume, right? We're not trying to do 25 or 30 sets for a muscle group every week of our actual quality work sets. Do we need to care about that? In other words, at what point do we say, hey, I could just do a conventional deadlift instead of a snatch grip deadlift? Do I really have to focus on just box squatting, or could I do some back squats, even my different barbells? Do I need to focus on the floor press, or can I just do more bench pressing? Okay. And I think what some of that comes down to is it a joint problem for you? In other words, doing a lot of wide grip benching at a certain threshold, can be hard on your shoulder joints. And that's part of what we talk about with the fatigue end also. But could we certainly do more benching and then do other supplemental lifts that hit the shoulders from a different angle and are easier on them? Sure, we could. Right? Can we do squatting and deadlifting as primary builders if we're not trying to push maximum volumes? Could we do 3 sets of 3 to 5 reps on each one? Sure we could. And then do other movements like some good mornings, reverse hypers, other stuff like that. Maybe some sled drags, box jumps for a quad. Sure, we could do all that. And that would be effective also. Okay? That would be effective also. We don't have to pull these back to what we oftentimes do even with the conjugate stuff of, oh, let's just hit maxes on them and some speed work and nothing else, and everything else needs to be bodybuilder type movements. Yeah, and that's one method, and that works. And I've certainly done that. I've done that successfully. But my point is, the whole concept of stimulus to fatigue isn't that important when we're not chasing maximum training volumes. If you're going to train with a moderate volume, and let's say that you're coming in and you want to get the most bang for your buck. And what do we mean by moderate volume? Let's say, again, a perfect example, like if I come in and I do 3 sets of heavy squats after some max work, 3 sets of deadlifts of some type of good morning, and then maybe one or 2 other exercises. And we're only doing 3 real work sets of each one. Okay. Do we care that much about the stimulus fatigue? No. And if anything, we might want to select bigger exercises. If that's all that we're doing, right? If we're coming in and after our really, like our max work or speed work or whatever it is that you happen to be doing, whatever system you're running, if you wanted to come in and only do about 12 or 13 total sets afterwards for the rest of your lower body, okay? I think the argument could be made that we don't need to worry about that at all. You might want to pick the exercises that are fatiguing because it's not really a big deal. You tend to get a little more out of them. You get a little bit more out of them because of oftentimes, again, the overlap. I mean, a back squat and a deadlift hit a lot of muscles. And their close variations do also. You could make the argument that we could actually get pretty good results on less volume. And that's the other end of it, is that some of the exercises that don't have the most amazing stimulus to fatigue ratios, you get a hell of a lot of muscle growth out of every set on them. You can get away with a lot less total volume. So really what it comes down to is what is it that you're trying to get out of your programming? Which direction do you want to approach it from? And in this case, I don't think that there is a real middle ground. I would say that what I'm saying now is the real middle ground, is saying, hey, minimalism and minimum volumes are probably not ideal, but there are downsides to chasing the maximum recoverable volume also. We could just pick really good exercises and program them at a nice moderate amount of volume that we know will stimulate good hypertrophy, stimulate good strength, and get the most bang for our buck and just get jacked and strong. That maybe we don't have to care about undulating our volume and ramping over a mesocycle to maximum recoverable volume and being extremely careful with our stimulus to fatigue, because at the end of the day, it may not give you anything extra at all over what I just described. And in the best case, you might be spending twice as much time in the gym or 3 times as much time in the gym chasing that 1%. Maybe you could have just come in and trained harder and move some heavier weight on some big movements. Okay. It's a couple of different ways of looking at it. I guess it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.